Hey everybody, and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program RP-0. We're picking up kind of where we left off last time and getting this Shuriken Mark 6C ready for launch, which does involve putting three very green Kerbals into the cockpit, or two, sorry, because we're going to pick up our third once we get to Kawaii Potato Station in low Earth orbit. So we're just waiting for our relative inclination with the station to come down to something pretty appropriate. So we have Ludmina and Tim. We'll just go with Tim. On board our shuttle today. This is their very first flight with the space program, so we do kind of expect them to, I don't know, struggle with it a little bit. This is a very complex piece of hardware, although the first initial phases of this flight went extraordinarily well. We were able to keep our relative inclination with the station down, and of course, since we're still quite under our rated tonnage for this vehicle, we should have absolutely no problem whatsoever getting ourselves to orbit. There was booster sep just a couple of seconds ago, and we are progressing quite well, I should say, into our orbital trajectory. A little bit of nose down there, just to make sure that we can circularize this bit pretty well. This is fairly standard. A slight roll back on the throttle for a little while, just to stretch that time to apogee out so that we can try to be as efficient with this injection as possible. I was really hoping that we could make rendezvous with the orbit or make rendezvous with the station after just a few orbits, or really try to keep that number down as swiftly as possible. We have transferred fuel from the EFT into the orbiter and then jettisoned the EFT. We'll now run our boot sequence and deploy our payloads before we can start making progress to the station. So there is our first satellite away with its biological sample, and number two, and the decoupler. I put it on the wrong way, so it is now permanently attached to that engine bell. I was really hoping we could try to burn it off later, but really the obvious solution here would have been to EVA our engineer, have them move out there and, like kick it to the side or something. But I was, I'm swiftly becoming too stupid to play KSP anymore. All the sleep deprivation and whatnot, and lack of time to really keep myself in practice. I just, in the moment, completely forgot that was actually an option. So I also forgot how to perform rendezvous, which it took us a very long time, I should say, to kind of work through this. I guess also our orbital period in relation to the station was just enough to where we're never going to actually get much closer than about 300 some odd kilometers. So we actually took a couple of laps trying to work this difference down and bring it back into something that was a little easier, although we did have this problem last time we took a shuttle to the station also, in that KSP was just straight up lying to me about our closest approach indicators and their actual separation distances. Mech Jeb was kind of being on point, but it's nice to have that visual indicator when you're doing some of this. So we did kind of screw around with some of the other Mech Jebby things, although they did not produce nearly any desirable results, and it really just took kind of going I don't know, whole hog in expending a bunch of Delta V to make this rendezvous happen. So I think we've just taken like our second lap, and just to make sure, I did a F5, F9 to see if that would clear up how KSP was handling these closest approach indicators. It did not. Not even in the slightest, and we should be making a fairly close approach on this pass. We're not. Instead of 300 kilometers, it's 500. But also, our separation of closest approach was steadily growing, even when we had our RCS disabled and we're not putting any forces on the craft, which that was the reason for the F5, F9. My apologies. So yeah, that's just a weird and interesting bug where our separation will either just grow or, you know, I think I said one time it was just shrinking for no real reason. It was a bug I first encountered in orbit of Mars, bringing a crew back from either Phobos or Deimos. I don't remember which one. And it made life a little complicated. But so we set a node. We're going to try to bring down our orbit quite a bit so that we can adjust our orbital period in such a way that hopefully we can get a good rendezvous in a pass or two. But you know, we'll just have to see. We are working that separation at closest approach down. It is sub 200 kilometers now, which is the closest it's been since we put this crew in orbit nearly 3 days ago. But at least they have that spare jump seat in the cargo bay they can go play around in. It's not like they're being wedged into a Soyuz capsule for this long, although there were lots and lots and lots of jokes about how Soyuz can do it in 3 hours, and it takes this shuttle crew on their very first flight, you know, more than 3 days just to get to the station to pick up a stranded Kerbal that forgot to board the bus on its way home. So we are finally getting to a place where I think we can go ahead and go for rendezvous. We're just trying to make a touch-up node. We are coming in roughly 13 kilometers off the bow now. We're going to try to adjust that down, get it down to hopefully just a couple of meters so that we can come in nice and close and make a clean, easy docking, knock on wood. Please stop laughing. And get the rest of this mission underway. We do have those 2 satellites that we would like to put into their contracted orbits. The delta V margins on those are going to be a little slim, and one of them has a decoupler stuck to its butt. So that's I don't know. This mission is already not going very well, but at least the scenery is quite nice, as we are now going to be coming in just a couple 80 meters off the space station itself, and so that we can burn for rendezvous, which is a 33 some odd meter per second correction to slow ourselves into rendezvous, and then of course we will go for docking. Obviously we will not have a very good docking port alignment because that would just be way too lucky. Yeah, we're coming in on the side occupied by the Nemo spacecraft. We're going to have to we're going to have to change sides because I think the only other available docking port has the the SKS shuttle adapter attached to it. So we're just going to change sides. The nice little bell roll there in the middle to bring our docking port around, and then try to zero out our velocity. And now, finally, after what was probably 2 hours into this live stream, maybe an hour and a half, we can start bringing ourselves in towards that docking port and get this crew hooked up, let them take a breather, walk around, enjoy the spacious accommodations here at Kauai Potato Station, and I don't know, pick up a very old Kerbal who has been in orbit for way too long, bring them earthbound, as long as they can take their calcium supplements and survive reentry, which will probably be in our next episode. So here's us lining up with the docking port, taking it nice and slow. This footage is sped up a whole bunch, and man, I don't know why I find off-axis dockings to be so much easier. They really are much more pain in the ass, but I think probably the end result just looks cooler. There's something to be said about docking through the cargo bay. It just feels legitimate, I guess. Showing my age as the kid who grew up watching dozens of shuttle launches, and always seeing it docked like that makes me just happy inside. So there is our last few adjustments on the angle, and boom, what a perfect parking job. I think we're just lined up extraordinarily well here. So we'll grab a couple of screenies that I will obviously forget to put in the thumbnail, and then EVA over our last Kerbal so that we make sure that we don't forget them this time. We did have to move someone back into the jump seat so that our retired Kerbal can sit in the cockpit and at least enjoy the view on the way home. So we'll dump over what resources we can before switching ourselves back over to our deployed satellites that hopefully we can get into orbit. We're going to start off with this one just to see if maybe we could burn off that decoupler, making sure that we're aiming for the right contract where we'll have to adjust our inclination and then bring ourselves back down. So it's really, we wanted to get that burn right on the ascending or descending node so that we could have our inclination change happen at our apogee where it will be most efficient. Of course, the higher in your apogee you go, the more efficient that plane change maneuver will be. However, you have to re-spend all that delta V to get back. But unfortunately, that decoupler is completely blocking our engine, leaving us the option of, well, send a Kerbal out here to take care of it, or do multiple 2+ kilometer per second corrections on the back of RCS, and we're just not going to do that. That mission will probably have to be reflown, which disappoints me greatly. Not much else I can say about that other than, wow, we bolted the thing on upside down, and now that whole satellite is junk. But I guess trying to nail 3 contracts off one flight was probably a bit too ambitious anyway. Although we'll have to see. I think our cheapest launcher on hand is an RA9 that still comes in at 30 grand, which probably eats up all the profits from taking those 2 contracts to begin with. So moving on to our second satellite, we have boosted its orbit up probably a bit more than we needed to. This one is going to go into a polar orbit, hopefully. We just need to try to get things lined up just a bit. We'll come in a little high and then break ourselves a little low. We spent, I don't know, 2 kilometers per second adjusting our orbit to make this plane change maneuver be much cheaper, but now we're down to about 1.9 kilometers per second of delta V left in the tank, which after plotting out a correction node or 2 is not nearly enough to realign our orbit. So the decision was made instead to lower our apogee by aerobraking. Super effective. We're usually quite good at this, just dropping our toes into the atmosphere with their new periapsis being about 100 kilometers. Our first pass netted us about 300 meters per second worth of braking, which is absolutely phenomenal. It almost makes up for the correction burn that we had to do to make our orbit get even lower. So we set yet another node for our second pass and see about 35 meters per second worth of correction on that burn. Each one is going to get slightly less effective as our apogee gets lower and lower, so we decided to dip our toes in a little further, bringing our periapsis down to 95 kilometers, which apparently was the point at which things just became, well, a bit too much. So we can go ahead and observe this. We don't have this biome. Hey, actual science, look at that. And cool, one, oh no. Great. Oh, it was too low. And pop, there goes the tank. Son of a... Well, okay then. Yep, and all this is going to go. At least we got that one science out of it. We're going to jump now out to Saturn for our Enceladus Explorer, or our Enceladus landing attempt mission, which has a maneuver node in really just a few, I think it was 2 days at the time, to make its next flyby and braking pass. So we're going to adjust our node in here, and yeah, we don't really get much gravitational assist from these flybys. It's probably going to take hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them by gravity alone just to make this a thing, and I'd like to get this landing underway. So we're going to bring that periapsis in nice and low, and this is just a quick plot to see how much delta V we need to actually land if we were to be in a low orbit, and it looks like somewhere less than 500 meters per second. I think we can pull it off with our terrible TWR. So the executive decision has been made to burn to completion the transfer stage and jettison it. This will leave about 2.4 kilometers per second left in our lander itself, so we're going to try to section that off and leave about 500 meters per second remaining in that stage, and then I'll try to work out a flight plan that we can use what fuel we have to get us into a nice low orbit and still hopefully pull a successful landing out of it. There is a jettison of our transfer stage, and soon we will be activating all 4 of our primary descent engines now that we are in our equipped landing mode. I think this is the first one of these missions to be free around Saturn without its transfer stage, which is kind of scary for me. We've got so little delta V in this thing, but yet we still need to make many flybys. It does look like that we can dial ourselves in for another one in just a little while, although it was many orbits away, 10 orbits, something like that, so trying to make it early just resulted in us overshooting and kind of going all wonky with it. But that's going to do it for this one, everyone. Thank you so much for hanging out. I really do appreciate it, and I will see all of you in the next one. So until then, see you later.